The secret to good iPhone photos and videos. Apple makes tens of millions of iPhones every year. Even with their top tier quality control, not every unit is going to be identical, and that's just the reality of scale. I learned this the hard way when I bought the iPhone 15 Pro Max the first time, and I saw the image and I thought it was just like completely off. The skin tones were flat, the color just it didn't look right. So if you've been doing photography and videography for a while, you tend to recognize these little shifts, and when it's a major shift, it just disturbs your inner equilibrium, your peace. So it wasn't subtle, and I just returned it, and I told him like, there's something wrong with it. So I grabbed this one and it looked fine. It looked baseline. So the first secret to good iPhone photos and videos isn't really about settings or gear. It's just understanding your specific device. So understand that, there could be the potential for difference from one iPhone to another. But the first tactic that I would suggest is definitely clean your lens. This is the main issue I find that a lot of people have when they say their iPhone photos and videos don't look good. It sounds simple, but it's honestly the cheapest and easiest upgrade people ignore. So your phone either lives in your pocket, lives in your bag, and then you accidentally touch it with your hand, which has oils. So unless you want a diffusion filter on your iPhone, I would really recommend cleaning it so that it's as sharp as it can be with the image that it can take. So grab one of these. This is called a microfiber towel or a microfiber cloth. You can get these from glasses stores, like optical stores. You can grab it from Walmart. You can grab it from, it usually comes with lots of camera accessories. So I have a lot of these from K&F Concept. So do a couple wipes there. Then you just look under light whether or not it's still dirty. So you can also use, I think, alcohol or liquid. What I would avoid is using rough towels or anything that could potentially scratch it, because then it will leave, a scratch on your lens and it won't look as good. So even a thin fingerprint can turn a sharp image into an oily mess, a diffusion looking mess. Now going into the resolution of your iPhone. So try to use the highest resolution and know why it works and why it doesn't work. So modern iPhones can shoot at 12, 24, or even 48 megapixels depending on the lens that you use. So here's the catch. The iPhone only has a few true optical lenses. So it's at the specific zoom steps that show up on your camera. So it's at 0.5, 1x, 2x, and 5x. So if you zoom anywhere in between, say 1.4x or 2.7x, the iPhone isn't magically changing the lenses. It's just cropping into the sensor and digitally filling in the gaps. Here's where it gets a bit technical. The iPhone has a quad Bayer sensor. So in plain English, it means the pixels are grouped in fours and then remapped by Apple software. It's how they squeeze the 12 megapixels and the 48 megapixels out of a tiny sensor. The trade-off though is that it's a cropped 12 megapixel photo on an iPhone. It just doesn't carry the same clean detail as it would be from a camera like, let's say, Sony. So if you care about the sharpness, don't pinch zoom, just walk closer or just use the native lenses. Now I'm going to take you through my settings and what I find that works best for me. So for formats, on camera capture, I have it on high efficiency. So it reduces the file, and since I am in the ecosystem of Apple, high efficiency works best for me. If you want it to be a bit more compatible, you can use most compatible, but then the file sizes might be a bit too big and you don't want that. So you want to stay in the high efficiency. So for photo mode, I keep it at 24 megapixels, but there's a catch to it. You can definitely get 48 megapixels off of shooting either ProRAW or even just the regular mode. There's just caveats to it. And then I turn on ProRAW and resolution control. For video capture, I turn on Apple ProRes, and then my ProRes encoding is logged. Going back to the settings, for composition, I have it on grid. I have the grid turned on. I have the level turned on. I have mirror front camera off, and then view outside frame, I turn that off because I don't want to get distracted with composing the shot. Then going into record video settings, I have it at base 4K 60, which I can then turn off, or I can change it to a different frame rate. But I keep it there because there's a certain look I'm going for that I'll mention. I have enhanced stabilization on. Now, one key tip here is that with HDR video, I keep it off. So if you turn that on, you might have difficulty. If you're editing in another software, you might have a little bit of an issue with editing the video and having the same color. So I have that off. Now going into the main camera, I have additional lenses checked on because I do use these focal lengths, 28mm 35. So you can tap in on your camera to do that. I have lens correction turned on. I also have lens cleaning hints turned on as well. So it's to display when the camera should be cleaned, but I just clean it regardless, like I mentioned in the first step. I find that my personal creative taste, I like underexposing on iPhone images because they tend to overexpose the image so that it's ready to post on social media. It's bright, so people equate that to looking better. That better image is a brighter image apparently to them. So this is why a lot of cameras, a lot of iPhone pics are a bit brighter. So I drag my exposure to around 0.7, 0.3, -1 if the image needs more reduction. And the way I look at it is that highlights are fragile and shadows are flexible, so you can adjust these in post. So one thing I find that people do a lot is that they click on the subject and then they turn down and then they move their camera and then the focus stays there. So if you want to reduce the exposure, what you want to do is go into your settings, click on exposure, and then reduce it rather than tapping on the screen and then risking not being in focus, because a non-focused image is not going to be an enjoyable experience. So reduce it from the settings itself rather than tapping and then putting it down. So another key thing that you want to consider is that take advantage of live photos. Live photos capture moments where there are in between. So from before you press the shutter and after you press it. So that means if, for example, you blink or there's a moment that's better when you're posing, this is where you can really get those shots where you wouldn't be able to if the live photos were not turned on. The caveat to that is that you can't have ProRAW. So if you're being very intentional with the shot and you're just taking your time, then turn on ProRAW. But then if you're not, you can just like turn it off and then have live mode on if you're taking lots of photos, maybe it's for the gram, if you're trying to pose. So just be mindful of that. Now going into my bread and butter, frame rates. So they define the look of your video. So 30 frames per second is a common frame rate per second that a lot of people use. 24, they equate that to looking cinematic, but with the iPhone, if you're not able to control the shutter, then you're not gonna have the kind of 180-degree rule that a lot of people mention. It's not a rule, it's more so what looks. So it looks a bit more natural when you wave. For example, with this camera, when I'm waving, it looks natural to movies. But with the iPhone, there's already this category of 30 frames per second looking like typical iPhone content. And then there's a trend these days that a lot of people are using is that 4K 60 frames per second. It gives you that sort of camcorder feel because it is more fluid. So because it looks like that, it looks a bit more high quality to a lot of people, when in reality it's just there's more frames per second in the image. So it's like this camcorder aesthetic that I personally really enjoy, and I've been using it in a vlog. So if that's your vibe, then that's your vibe. But frame rate isn't just technical, it's also a creative choice. So decide it on the mood that you want. Now going into filmmaking tools that you can use to level up your iPhone footage. So you can, if you want to push it further, you can attach a mobile accessory to your iPhone and then get videos that way, so that you can follow that 180-degree rule that people are recommending, or that a lot of filmmakers recommend. So you can transform that with using an ND filter. If you want to take photos as well, you want to cut off the glare, you can use filters that are used on camera, on lenses. So you can take these and then slap it on here. The only thing that you have to be worried about is that there is the potential for vignetting, especially if you use the wider focal lengths. So be mindful of that it might vignette. Now, the iPhone is the most democratized camera in the world right now, but democratized doesn't mean identical. So some units might have a different color shift, some units might be warmer, might be cooler. Just be mindful of this and try to assess it from your standpoint. So just learn your phone, the ins and outs of it, and then use it to the best of your ability. And if you're interested maybe in cameras or other stuff, click on one of these, and I'll see you guys there when I